Act 3, Scene 2. Yeah, for the podcast. So people who are absent can get their notes. Plus on B-days, I just play the podcast for them and I just sit at my desk. No, I do teaching. You paid all the big bucks to have me here live, so I'll do it for you. All right, Act 3, Scene 2 starts with Hamlet addressing the players, the actors, with instructions. And he's very detailed about it. Did you notice that? That was a real question that you can answer out loud. Okay. He's very detailed about it. For example, the very first thing he says is, speak this speech as I pronounced it to you. So he's already demonstrated for them how he wants them to deliver the lines that he's created to add to the play. Remember, he was going to put in some lines and have that actor change the play a little bit so it looks more like what the ghost told him happened with Claudius in the garden. So he says, do it just as I pronounced it to you. Don't underdo it, he says. Don't overdo it. He says right here, if you want to mark on line 3, do not saw the air too much with your hand, thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent, tempest, and may I say whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. So he's kind of like acting like a director. He's saying, don't move your arms around too much. It will distract people from your words. Don't overdo it. And then on the next page he says, don't underdo it either. Be not tame neither. Right? So he's giving them all this instruction. Why does he need to give them so many instructions about how to do the play? He wants them to do what? Make it perfect so that he can get a reaction from Claudius. Because if the actors underdo it, Claudius might miss it, right? And he might not have a reaction. So then the question would be, did he not react because he's not guilty, or did he not react because he didn't see in the play what he was supposed to see? Right? So Hamlet's got this interest in making sure that the actors perform the play in a way where Claudius can recognize himself and his actions against old Hamlet in their performance. So he's got all these instructions that he gives them. Then Polonius enters, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and they have a little conversation. Hamlet wants to talk to Horatio, though. So he speaks to Horatio, and if you look on the study guide, the next item is that he explains to Horatio what he hopes to accomplish with the play. Where could we say, what line shows us that he wants to express that to Horatio about his hopes for the play? Where's a good line for that? '67, okay. There is a play tonight before the king, he tells Horatio. One scene of it comes near the circumstance which I have told thee of my father's death. I have told thee. So somewhere, since he met with the ghost, Hamlet kind of took Horatio into his confidence and told him what the ghost told him about the death. Because he doesn't tell him right after he meets with the ghost. He tells them, I'm not going to tell you. So he has confided in Horatio in the last couple of months. That tells us a little something about their relationship. He doesn't tell anybody else. So he says, the play's going to have a scene that is set up to sort of mimic what I told you the ghost told me happened to my father. I prithee when thou see it. Prithee means like I beg of you. Or please. When thou seest that act afoot, even with the very comment of thy soul, observe my uncle. So he's asking Horatio to do the same thing that he's going to do. Why does he need Horatio to do it if he's going to watch Claudius to see how he reacts?
Because he needs a witness.
He needs a witness? Okay, maybe Hamlet's not going to catch it, and he wants to make sure that Horatio catches it. Or maybe Hamlet thinks he sees a reaction because he wants it to happen, and then Horatio can say, no, nothing really happened. Like they can converse about it. It's like a second opinion. Right? So he says, observe my uncle. If his occulted guilt does not itself unkennel in one's speech, it is a damned ghost we have seen. If he doesn't react, then I'll know that the ghost was lying or wasn't really my father. Now, that's a flawed theory. Why would I say that's a flawed theory?
Because you can hide your reaction.
He could hide his reaction. So just because he doesn't react doesn't mean he's not guilty. He could miss it, right? He could be lost in thought, thinking about something else, observing something else, yeah. But Hamlet seems to think that if Claudius doesn't react, then that means it was tricky ghost that tried to persuade him to do something evil. But that's kind of flawed thinking. He said, give him heedful note. Pay close attention to him, for mine eyes will rivet to his face. I'm going to focus right in on him. And you could see that. Did you look at that picture that I put in there? If you flip a couple pages, I put an image in your packet to kind of lay out the scene. It's a very complicated scene to set up on the stage because we call it the play within a play. There's a play happening within the play that's already happening, and you have to kind of sort that out to set it up. So in this image, you can see that we've got, and this is usually how it's set up because any other way would be difficult for the audience to see both plays. We have to be able to see both things going on. So in this back portion, there's this stage that's being, the play that's being put, you can see it's right at the moment when the person is pouring poison into the victim's ear right there. Right, so it's that very moment. And over here we can see probably Claudius reacting to that right before he jumps up, because the reaction is pretty obvious when it comes down to it. And then we can see also this is probably next to him, Gertrude. Hamlet's pretty obviously right here in the middle because he is not even hiding that he's staring at Claudius during this performance. He's got his back to the play, and he's just laying on the floor staring over there at Claudius. And we know this is also Hamlet because who do we have here? He's sitting at the foot of Ophelia, right? She's here. And this is probably Horatio because, look, he's not looking at the play either. He's staring over here at the king. This is probably Polonius. Right, so this is the moment that we see the reaction. And just after that is probably when Claudius stands up, calls for light, calls off the play, and has that kind of a reaction to it. So when Hamlet is talking to Horatio, he's trying to help him, help get some another set of eyes on the situation. He didn't really need to, but he didn't know that at the time, right? He didn't know that Claudius was literally going to jump up. He probably thought that it would be like a fleeting look on his face or like eyebrows going up real quick or something like that. But it turns out that Claudius has a really extreme reaction to the play. All right, Horatio agrees to it, and then everybody enters, and they're going to start the play. But as everybody enters, the king and the queen and Polonius and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and all of that, as we can see on the study guide, Hamlet has odd behavior with both Gertrude and Ophelia. How would you characterize his odd behavior with Gertrude? What does he do or say? That's a little later on. When he's talking to Gertrude. What's the first thing Gertrude says?
Sit next to me.
Yeah, come sit next to me, she says, right? Hamlet's there, and his mother says to him, "Come hither, my dear Hamlet, sit by me." Right here on line 97. And Hamlet's reaction is, "No, good mother, here's metal more attractive." Attractive is a pun because there are two meanings to attractive. One is, like physically pleasing, right? So that's a put down on his mother, because when he says, here's metal more attractive, he goes to sit by Ophelia. So he's telling his mother she's prettier, but also attractive can have to do, because he says metal more attractive, right? So that brings in the idea of a magnet, right? Yeah. In other words, he's also drawn more to Ophelia than he is to his mother. So it's like physically being drawn or pulled in her direction, like she's more magnetic to him at the moment. Have you ever had two magnets? They do experience, don't they, when in middle school or something, with magnets that are pulled together, but then if you flip one around, you can't put them together, right? So his mother is repelling to him, and Ophelia is more appealing to him. Yeah, right? Polonius even says, did you hear that? Like, wow. But Gertrude doesn't say anything. Hamlet has a little dirty conversation with Ophelia, which is meant to upset her, which it does. He says, shall I lie in your lap? Well, that would be inappropriate at a public performance, right? And she says, no. Lie in my lap is like a sexual innuendo. And Hamlet says, I mean, my head on your lap. Like taking a little nap, and she says, okay. All right. And he said, do you think I meant country matters? Which we can tell from the conversation after that is another sexual innuendo. Right? Did you think I meant country matters? And she says, I didn't think anything at all. And he says, that's a fair thought to lay between a maid's legs. Whoa. Right? And she says, what? He says, nothing, because he's not going to be laying anything between that maid's legs, right? That's the idea. I don't think I have to explain the whole joke to you, but I'm not going to draw any pictures or anything. Hamlet is in a merry mood, and Ophelia says, you are merry, my lord. And she says it probably in a way that's a little aggravated. Wow, you're full of energy, right? And he says, well, why not? Why shouldn't I be happy? Look how cheerful my mother is, and my father died only 2 hours ago. Oh my God. Well, that's an exaggeration, right? Ophelia says, no, 'tis twice 2 months, my lord. In other words, 4 months, which validates our decision that there's been a few months that have gone by between Act 1 and Act 2. She says, no, it's been 4 months. And Hamlet says, oh, well, it's a miracle we even remember who he is then if it was 4 months ago. So the sarcasm is strong here. Sarcasm is strong with this one, is that what you said? Why is he in such a fanciful mood? Why is he so up?
He's already been validated.
Yeah, he's about to find out if he can move on with his plan. He's moving ahead. He's not angry at himself anymore, because now at least he's doing something about the question of whether Claudius is guilty or not. So next up, there's a dumb show. It doesn't have a note about dumb show, but a dumb show is not called that because it's dumb in our sense. It does that because it's deaf. There are no words spoken. So what they used to do in Shakespeare's time, because very few people were literate, now you go to a play and you open it up, it's got the actors, right, are all listed there, and it's got like maybe a little summary of the play, or maybe even a summary of each act, what's supposed to be happening, so that you can follow along. But if you can't read, that doesn't do you any good. So what they used to do is do a dumb show, and so the actors would come in and they would just pantomime real quick the things that were going to be happening, so that the audience would have like a little preview of what to expect. That way when they're doing the poetry and all that stuff, they understand where they are in the progress of the plot. So the dumb show is silent. The actors just come in, and you can see that it's sort of like a play version of what they're going to be doing later. So they talk about that a little bit as they're watching it. And Hamlet says, is this a prologue or a posy of a ring? In other words, it's awfully short. And Ophelia says, 'tis brief, and Hamlet says, as woman's love. Which is a burn. I think he means that for Ophelia and also for Gertrude, right? I mean, Ophelia called it off with him, so I could see why he would say that to her, but I think he also says that in earshot of Gertrude because of her switch from old Hamlet so quickly to Claudius. And so I think he just thinks women are fickle and, all of that. Do you want to go through all the stuff that the play is saying? Because I don't know if it's all that important. You can suffice it to say, maybe summarize, that the king and queen, the player queen and the player king are talking about love and about the fidelity of marriage. It's very poetic and very highbrow as they're performing for the king and for the queen. She's kind of like, the sun and the moon have traveled around so many times while we have been together. We've been together for a very long time. And the king says, I'm sorry that I have to leave you. And it's all very poetic. And it's leading up to the moment where, let me see, page 72 is where the actor Lucianus, the character Lucianus, who is the nephew to the king, he's not like the brother to the king. Maybe Hamlet's thinking that would be too obvious or something. He's the nephew to the king, pours the poison in his ear right here on line 238. And as soon as that happens, Polonius, Ophelia says the king rises, and Polonius says, give over the play, stop the play, lights, and then he leaves. So he literally stops the play at that moment and leaves the room. So Hamlet very clearly has his answer. Because why would you stop the play in the middle if you didn't, have some reason for it? So looking at the study guide, the next thing is number 6. Hamlet deliberately banters with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Rosencrantz tells Hamlet his mother wants to see him. What line could we point to show that Rosencrantz comes and tells Hamlet that his mother wants to see him? Right. Line 301 right here. She desires to speak with you in her closet before you go to bed. We already know that closet means like her private rooms. And this we know is Polonius' plot. His, step 3 of trying to prove that Hamlet is lovesick over Ophelia. But Hamlet starts to suspect, or continues to suspect, that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are sort of betraying him by giving information to Claudius. And so he questions them and starts to insinuate that they think that they can play upon him like an instrument. That if you just press the buttons on the instrument, you'll get a sound out of it. So he tells Guildenstern, will you play upon this pipe? Line 320. This part can be a little confusing if you don't understand why he's doing that. By pipe, he means like a flute. They have recorders. Recorders are like the first way they teach you to play music when you're a kid, right? I'm talking about those flutes that they have. So it's not really a pipe, it's a flute. It's just the old word for a flute, really. And Guildenstern says, I don't know how to play the pipe. And Hamlet says, well, go ahead, play it. And they have this little argument, and Guildenstern says, I don't know anything about it. And Hamlet says, well, then, why would you think that you could play on me? Oh. He says, I'm not an instrument where you can just press the right button and get all the information that you want out of me. And he's sort of letting him know, I'm on to you. I know that you're just going to take whatever you can learn from me and take it to Claudius. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern think they're doing something good to help him, so they don't really understand why Hamlet's mad at them, because they don't understand that Claudius is Hamlet's enemy. They don't know about the ghost. So it's genuine that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are trying to help him. They don't know that they're being, deceitful, but Hamlet treats them that way. He says, you cannot play upon me. I'm on to you. I'm not going to just yield information just because you press the right buttons. Polonius shows up and says, oh yeah, your mom's waiting for you. So this is like the second notification that his mother's waiting for him. But Hamlet has to play with Polonius a little bit first, right? He always has to play around with Polonius to confuse him and make him feel stupid. So Hamlet says, oh, look at that cloud over there. It looks like a camel. And Polonius is like, yeah, it looks like a camel. And Hamlet says, no, I think it's a weasel. Yes, sir, it's a weasel. Because Polonius is a servant, even still. And so he's like agreeing with Hamlet. And then Hamlet changes it. Oh, I think maybe it's a whale. And he's just taking up his time and wasting his energy and making him feel dumb. And he says, all right, tell my mom I'll be there in a minute. And so Polonius leaves, and Hamlet's got a little speech. I wouldn't call it a soliloquy, because mainly he's talking about how the night feels kind of wicked, and there's something in the air that makes him feel that something's upset. 'Tis now the very witching time of night, he says. The churchyards yawn, and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Bless you. So something is up. There's an electric feeling to the air. And so he says, now to my mother. I'm going to go to my mother's room. But before he leaves, he says, oh heart. He's talking to his heart. That's called an apostrophe. When somebody is speaking to something that can't answer. O heart, lose not thy nature. Let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. In other words, heart, keep me from killing my mother. So that lets us know that he's feeling like he might. There's a reference to Nero who did kill his mother, and Hamlet saying, I hope I'm not like Nero. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. So he's planning to be cruel to her. What could he possibly be cruel to her about? Only one thing. What is it? How her marriage to Claudius has upset and hurt him so deeply, right? So he's planning to confront her. Well, we know that Gertrude is planning to confront him. So you can see that there is going to be a volatile meeting if both of them are going to the meeting to confront each other firmly on different things. But if one person comes to a meeting ready to attack and the other person comes to a meeting ready to attack, there's going to be fireworks. Something's going to fight. Okay. He says, I will speak daggers to her. What would it mean if you were speaking daggers to someone?
Straight up.
Well, straight up, but also painful, right? Painful. I'm going to tell her exactly how she has made me feel and what I think of her. And it's going to hurt her. Finally, he's been thinking this stuff for a long time. But I will use none. In other words, I promised the ghost that I wouldn't take vengeance out on her. So I'm going to tell her how I feel, but I'm not going to literally hurt her. My tongue and soul in this be hypocrites. In other words, I want to kill her, but I won't. So we're supposed to imagine Gertrude's in her room preparing with Polonius, right? Because Polonius is going to hide and listen to them so he can report back to the king. And then Hamlet's going to come in, and while she's preparing, she's thinking, how am I going to address my son firmly so he knows I'm serious, that I want to know what's wrong with him? And Hamlet's thinking, I'm going to give my mother a piece of my mind that I've been boiling about for 4 months. Yeah, they just said twice by 2 months. All right. So we have, again, another cliffhanger, don't we? We're going to wait for that scene because some stuff's going to go down. Did we answer all the stuff on the study guide? I feel like we did. Yes, right? All right, your homework is 2 things. I want you to read scene 3 and scene 4. Make note, scene 3 is not very long. and then scene 4. But I also want you to do a little bit of research, because next week we are going to prepare a director's note set for Act 3, Scene 4. So I want you to research stage directions, know about stage right, stage left, down center, all of that. The stage is broken up into segments. So you want to be able to direct the actors to go, like actors don't just wander around on stage, right? Usually there are tape marks on the stage so that at different key points, they know that by the time they get to the end of this line, they have to be here. Or by the time they're ready to do their soliloquy, they're right here where this X is. And all of that has been planned out ahead of time. So we're going to practice how would we set up Act 3, Scene 4, but you need to know about stage direction, so you have to do some research and make some notes, stage movement, and also set design. Set design has to do with laying out furniture, items that need to be in that scene, and so on. We're going to work in groups next week to make a director's notebook for the actors in that scene. All right. So you'll have to research that and also read scenes 3 and 4. We also have our vocabulary quiz on Monday, so you should have been studying that already, but just a reminder. Also on Monday, the counselors are coming in to talk to you about local scholarships. But they said that will only take about 15 minutes, like how they go about applying for those. So I want to give you the rest of the time today.